Hello, hello. Welcome to What's Working Now. I am your excited, enthusiastic, elated host, Katie Richardson, here with an exceptional, high-achieving performer in many different areas. This is an individual who's going to share with us what does it take to achieve excellence. And today's interviewee is somebody that I met at an event. And as I saw him speak, I thought, this is a guy that I have a lot of alignment with. He understands the power of mindset. He understands the power of taking big action, real action, and putting action to your words and your commitments. And so welcome to the show, John Madsen.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Couldn't be more excited to be here.
Well, everybody needs to know John is a former NFL player. He's a high performance coach, both in physical fitness. He also helps people in mindset. And to really share kind of a window into your world, I would love to start by you sharing an experience that has really formed and shaped how you view the world today.
Awesome. Love to start there. So when I was in ninth grade, I was an athlete pretty much my whole life. And everything that I remember about my parents and the support and, just the way that my childhood was spent on baseball diamonds, football fields, tennis courts, basketball courts. And so if anybody asked me, like, John, what are you going to do when you grow up? It was emphatically, I'm going to be a professional athlete. And so nobody could deter me from that dream. Luckily, I had parents tell me, John, whatever you think you can do, you can do. So I was brought up in that type of household. Ironically, though, when I went from ninth grade to 10th grade, which is when I started my high school career, I had played football from the time I was 10 years old, nonstop, all the way until this moment. And I was going to go out and play football in high school. And the first thing we had to do, though, was go to the weight room for summer conditioning. And we had to max out on bench press, squat, deadlift. And it was the first time I had ever been in a weight room. And so up until this point, I'm a kid, I'm a good athlete. I assume that, I'm going to play football. And in this moment, I go over to the bench press with 5 of my friends and we're just warming up. They're warming up. We're trying to reach our one rep max. They put 25 pounds on each side on a 45-pound Olympic bar. So it's only 95 pounds. They lift it off expecting it to be easy. And it just completely crushes my sternum. And so my friends are laughing. Someone has to pick it up off of my chest. And in a moment, like I'm trying to play it off like I'm cool, but it shattered my confidence. Like it hurt my chest, but it shattered my confidence.
Wow.
So in that moment, I decided that I was not going to play high school football. And I was too scared and I was too small and I was going to get hurt and all these things. And so I went home and I told my dad, I was like, Dad, this is what happened today. I'm not going to play high school football. I don't think it's a very good idea. I'll focus all my effort on basketball and baseball. However, I want you to help me get strong, because this was an insecurity now that I feel like was like a fork in the road. I'm going to run away from it and just stay away from that moment, or I'm going to run right into it. And so he got me a trainer at the local gym. And at 16 years old, 15, 16 years old, I put on 25 to 30 pounds over the next 24 months. My athleticism increased dramatically. My confidence was at an all-time high. I never played a single down of high school football, and I ultimately played in the National Football League. And had it not been for that moment, I would have never had the chance to do so.
And what's so cool is you described this experience. I'm sure everybody's reflecting back to a similar experience that they had. And what's interesting, you pointed this out, in that moment, you could have run away from it, right? Crushed, humiliated, embarrassed, and yet you made a decision and a commitment to overcome and doubled down on your commitment to improving. Where do you think that drive comes from?
I wanted to prove everybody wrong. I knew that. And so I had this dream where I was obsessed with it. It was omnipresent. I was in my head. If I was playing sports, just practicing by myself, it wasn't like some people practice and some people really practice. And that's what I usually try to tell athletes is when I was practicing, I was in my head, playing against Michael Jordan and Larry Bird. And I was hitting game-winning shots. And in my imagination was I was submerged in this reality. And so as I look back, I understand that I created all of that. There was actually no direction other than to reach the pinnacle of my dreams. And so that was impressive to me, not knowing how to do it, but just being very natural at it. But ultimately, I think insecurity now is such an opportunity. So I look at insecurity and I think it's such an opportunity to run right into it. Right. So I look at insecurity as a good thing because of that moment where I think a lot of other people hit insecurity and they just run away. And
Yeah.
I've done that too. But this one moment taught me that, like, hey, if I'm insecure about something, why not run right into that fear? And if I do so, usually the magic is on the other side.
Okay, so you had big visions, big dreams, and were able to perform in these sports. You had this moment, this critical moment where life exposed that insecurity, and then rather than running away, you dove head first, and you even said to your dad, "I want your help and commitment in doing this." So how does that relate to the John Madsen of today, who is so incredible on Instagram, who speaks the truth, who is helping people transform their body, and as a result, transform their relationships, business? Help us see how that brought you to today.
6 years ago, I know it was 6 years ago, just a little bit ago, because Facebook actually reminded me of this other moment. And so 6 years ago, I have this like big, like ugly beard, and I'm in my truck and I'm sitting outside of my gym. I know where I'm at. People on Facebook didn't know where I was at, but I know that truck was parked right outside my physical gym in Salt Lake City. And I open this video up with, "Hey guys, like I don't like to do video, but I'm just gonna go for it. And so I'm not very good at video because X, Y, and Z. However, I know that my business is going to be reliant on this. So, just hang on and you're going to get some video from John Madsen." And so the caption of that was like, "Ready, fire, aim. This is video number one." And I start talking about whatever I'm going to talk about. And so I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And so I watch it. I literally watch it. And I'm watching this previous version of me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, I almost look younger 6 years later for whatever reason. And I'm like, the look at, like, the shine in my eye is different. And yet I'm like, I had so much respect for this man that I don't really know that much anymore because I'm so different. But there was another insecurity that I was afraid to put myself on camera. And it's not that fear. Like if I peeled that back, it was like, I was extremely fearful of what other people would think of me and the rejection that I might get if they didn't like what I said, or if they disagreed, or whatever it was. And so 6 years ago, that's when the journey started. And so Business Insider previously just wrote an article about me probably a year ago that was like, overnight success story, online trainer hits a revenue number that somehow they came up with, right? And so there's this idea that I was an overnight success. Yet I was reminded that 6 years ago was when I actually like jumped into the water again, very insecure, very unsure. Like I had a belief, but I also was like feeling imposter and all the other things that people feel. But I have so much respect because the one thing that I have done is I've put myself in that situation in football. I've put myself in that situation in business, and over again. I think I'm just extremely stubborn, and I'm willing to endure whatever it takes to get the type of life I want.
And I've witnessed that from you. And it's really incredible to watch your level of commitment and drive and passion and how you focus and channel that. So one of the messages that you have is like, what's wrong with vanity? If you want to have six pack, like go get a six pack, and I can show you how to do that. One of the things that I constantly see from you is this real raw honesty and this not having a fear of being the contrarian and just speaking the truth. Why do you think that's important as you are sharing your messages out into the world?
I mean, I want people to know the real me. And so I don't want to hide behind what is politically correct or not correct. It's like this, like I'm going to put me out there, and someone can reject it or not reject it or accept it or love it. And I've come to grips with the fact that some people might love it and some might hate it. But I'm like, my freedom is solely on my ability to express myself as myself. I'm not pretending to be a character. Like this is me. And I'm so glad you said the word vanity. I literally had a talk with, I was in a room full of Christian entrepreneurs. And so like, I didn't grow up supremely religious at all. And so, and I don't know if you know, but I got baptized October, just this past year. And so there's been like, there was a
I
distinct,
didn't
like
know that.
35 years of my life, a-religious, agnostic, borderline
Wow.
atheist. And then the last 2 years been on this faith journey and end up like going all in. And so the reason I say that is because I'm in this group with Christian entrepreneurs that are like extremely successful. And they're like, John, will you come
Mhm.
talk to us about fitness? And I'm like, I got a little bit nervous in this regard, because I'm like, oh man, like my message is like, might be a little abrasive to people who
Mm.
might not
Okay.
understand. And so I had this thought, and I was like, money and vanity, or greed and vanity, to me are one of the same. And so I understand like the extremes of both of those words. And like, as someone hears them, they're thinking like greed, very negative emotional response, vanity, very negative emotional response. But money and representing excellence is not greedy, nor is it vanity. And so a
Mm.
lot of times in fitness, people want to dance around the fact that they want to look better because it doesn't sound virtuous. Just like they'll
Yeah.
dance around, like you'll ask somebody like, why are you so driven or ambitious to have a business? And they're like, because I want to help a lot of people. And it's like, to
Mhm.
me, I'm like, I don't really necessarily need to specify that, because that's already on my heart. I'm like, it's okay for me to, go make as much money as possible, because I already know that what I'm going to do with it. Right. And so in the same sense, vanity and fitness is like, I just want to be healthy for my family. And as soon as someone utters those words, I know they're going to not get the results that they want, because they're not being true to themselves. And so they'll
Yeah.
play for all these other metrics without admitting to themselves that it's like, hey, like I'm putting all this work in. Wouldn't it actually be nice if I was supremely confident in the reflection that I see? Not in a
Mhm.
vain vanity type of way, but in a, hey, I respect and love you for the effort, and you deserve to look this way because you were built in the image of your creator. And I promise
Mm.
you, the image of your creator is not mediocre in any sense of the imagination. Right. And
Yeah.
so I'm talking to these Christian entrepreneurs, and I smash them with this verse from Genesis. And they're like,
Love
oh
this.
my gosh, they're like, I'm in. Right. And I'm not trying to close
Yeah.
anybody. I'm like, if you
No.
already work out, I'm like, how many people work out? They're like, here. How many people eat healthy? Here. How many people look exactly the way that they want to look? And all their hands go down. I'm like, if you're
Wow.
already doing it, wouldn't it make sense to have what you could have? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, cool. That's actually really simple. But the first part of that is you have to stop being so virtuous and just admit that you would like to represent excellence.
Man, John, I love this ability to tell the truth, to go deeper, say the thing that they want and dream and desire, and yet are afraid to say out loud. And you have the courage to say those things out loud. And I love how you found the way to stand firm in your Christian faith and belief and share these things that seem counter to a lot of Christian teachings and history. And you went right to the source, your creator, right? And helping people identify that potential that is
Yeah.
also within them. So good, so powerful. One of the things that I see a lot of people who struggle and would probably love to hear your experience with this is they're great at their expertise, right? Their thing, whatever that is, running Facebook ads or teaching people how to create a course or a program. And yet they haven't leaned into marketing like you have. And so they're really great, they're awesome, and they have big wins with the few clients who do come into their world, and yet they're not really putting themselves out there. And so what are some of the things that you have done to take this greatness that you have achieved in fitness and to also bring it into your business and marketing skills?
Yeah. So the one thing I would tell people is like, again, this is not an overnight success. So probably 2016, I bought my first course on marketing, and it was a clients on demand course. And I learned for the first time, like what, Facebook ad was, and, a pixel. And I'm like, what is all this stuff? And at this time I had a physical gym, and I was wanting to do this online version because I wanted freedom more than I wanted any other thing. Right. And so this has been an expression of mine for some time. But the interesting thing was I learned how to put a Facebook ad up and then send a person to a webinar and schedule a call. And then there was one really big problem. They wanted me to sell my fitness program for, $4,000 to $5,000. And I'm like, that's cool for people in the business to business world, but nobody's going to
Mhm.
buy a $5,000 fitness program. And like, this was my
Mm.
belief. And this is why I love mindset. And they're like, you have a mindset problem. And this is one of Tony Robbins, like, main coaches for a lot of years. He's like, you have a mindset problem. I'm like, I promise you, dude, that I played football and didn't even play high school. And I scored a couple of touchdowns. You can talk to them about a mindset problem. Just give me the tactics and strategies, because
Yeah.
I don't have a mindset problem. And I literally bought like 4 other coaches programs over 2016, 17, 18,
Oh,
19,
man.
still with like this belief, right? And then it
Right.
wasn't until I found somebody that like I finally was like relented to the fact that I might have like an internal problem that is showing up external.
Mm.
So like, let's explore that. And there was,
Because you had tried several different avenues and we're still kind of in the same place, you started to wonder, is it me?
yeah. And so I
So
had
good.
monetary programs that was like scarcity, right? I had
Mhm.
monetary programs that were absolutely like ripped out of me. But I also, this is where I discovered that my fear of being judged and rejected was not allowing my message to be sticky. It was like I was
Mm.
trying to copycat what other people were doing and be like, oh, this person,
Yeah.
so I'm going to talk about this or this. And I was so tired of not winning, like literally. So imagine my wife and I've been married for like going on 9 years now. And so she
Awesome.
was always a high performer, VP of marketing, very stable. I'm the crazy entrepreneur. And so
Okay.
there was a lot of pressure on her that I didn't love, but she took it on, right? And she's a champion. She's a rock for our family. And there was multiple months, and I'll never forget one where, she's like, John, mortgage is due next week. Can you transfer some money out of your business account into our personal account so we can pay this mortgage? And I'm like, that feeling when if I logged into my bank account that I didn't want to see it because I knew it wasn't good,
Mm.
but I didn't really want to know how bad it was. And so,
Yeah.
it was less than the mortgage was, I'll tell you that. And just that
Wow.
sinking feeling of like, man, I am a failure, right?
Mm.
This is not acceptable. And
Mhm.
so that was like the catalyst of like, maybe there is something that like, maybe I do have a mindset problem. So I went all in on that. But then I realized that there was not only a mindset problem, but a fear of rejection and fear of not being accepted or loved and all of that stuff. And so long story short, I put a camera in front of my face and I just went off script for 10 minutes and did what I now call like a video sales letter. And I'm
Okay.
like, I'm just going to speak truth into this camera, like my truth. I don't care if anybody else likes it.
Yeah.
And I did it in like 1 or 2 takes, like got into and the state that I wanted, which ultimately came across as like supremely frustrated, but like I'm tired of this. And that message, we started running ads to it, and overnight, like the applications that came in was dream customers. I'm talking like
Mm.
CEOs, entrepreneurs,
Yes.
business guys, and they're like, and there was a question on the application like, why do you want to work with me specifically? And they were
Yeah.
like, that video just punched me in the face. Like that video, that video,
So
that
good.
video. And so I learned a very valuable lesson. And so now I'm on like iteration, probably 3 of that video, but I've
Okay.
been running traffic to a video like that for nonstop for 2.5 years, nonstop. And I'm like, it keeps producing. And it's because the message actually is supremely authentic to me. And people have tried to rip my funnel off. There's millions of people trying to, not millions, but like literally hundreds of people trying to rip it off. And they can't do it because they can't be me better than I can be me. They could
Yes.
do them better than I could do them, 100%.
Yeah.
I can't beat them at doing them, but they absolutely unequivocally cannot beat me at being me, and they keep trying, and that's why they keep failing. So in marketing, if there's one tip, it's supreme authenticity, and that's
Yeah.
going to be the messaging will be the attractor to your dream clients.
I was recently interviewing a guy named Ken Jocelyn, and he talked about authenticity, which has been such a buzzword for the last several years. And the truth is, according to him, he said it is the highest frequency that we are most attuned to. And it's like, there's an incredible author, Terry Warner, that I love his books. And the way he describes it is like, it's just one of those things as a human being, you just know, you can just tell. You just tell when somebody's being real and honest with you. You can tell, and you can feel it. And so to bring that to your marketing requires you to be real, raw, and honest and authentic with yourself, right? Because if you don't know how to do that with yourself, there's no way you're gonna be able to do it when you pull out a camera. And part of that was you reached this breaking point. You're like, that's it. I've had it. I've invested. I've tried. I've tested. I've done the things and did everything the experts and the gurus told me to do. And it was the real authenticity. And the other thing that I'm hearing is when you do that, you made an emotional connection. Like the emotion showed up. Again, you can't fake that. It's not something you can just script.
I love that word too, because it's absolutely true. And I don't think that I honestly believe that most people aren't willing to tap into it. They're too afraid. And that's why it always comes back to a mindset problem. It's like, cool, be authentic. They try. I'm like, that's not authentic. Because what you said, I've been geeking out about the word resonance lately. And when somebody says something or the news says something, it's like, there's a resonance that like, it's real. And it's like that intuition, like I can feel it. And so I can tap into this resonance with people. And I'm like, there's multiple people that I'll watch and I'm like, they're not bad people, but what they say, like there's a disresonance there. And I'm like, I'm just gonna like mute this account because like I can feel something that I don't love. And they could be great people, but it doesn't have that resonance, right? And there's to the contrary, there's people like you and other people, it's like there's a resonance there that just resonates. And for whatever reason, it's not the word, it's like everything is a resonance or an authentic expression. And people have a really hard time tapping into that because A, they either don't know who they really are, or B, they're so afraid if they were to present this person to the world, what that would mean to the people that, you know, maybe they're high school friends, but maybe it's their sister or brother or mother or father. It's usually in that circle. If they really consider, like, if I said this thing, what would these people think or do? And this fear of them like losing these people just keeps them like, not, I'm going to stay in my box. And it's like, A, I don't think, you know, they're going to miss out on freedom if they do that in their life. B, if they're a marketer, they're never going to win.
John, I love this because we're talking about business, we're talking about marketing, and yet we're talking about having a deep understanding and connection with what you're feeling and being able to take action from that place. Resonance, like I love this. And so, you know, there's so many people who say they want to do what you're talking about. What would you say are like the top 3 things that you have done to better come to know and understand yourself so that you can radiate this authenticity and speak the truth? As you look back on your experience, what are the things that really helped you have those breakthroughs?
So A, hire a mentor like you, like hire a Katie for one, right? Like hire somebody that understands this and can help you, because if you're unaware of it, there's nothing to fix and you'll keep getting the same thing that you've been getting. And so like this non-awareness, let's call it, is like the thing that keeps everybody like right where they're at, right? So A, it's
and the way you described it in your experience was maybe it's me. You couldn't even see it then. Maybe it's me. Maybe I do need help with my mindset. Still couldn't see it, but you took action.
And so I found somebody that was able to help me explore like these, I call them like equal signs in life, right? It's like there's these dichotomies that live inside of us, and then there's these cause and effect that live inside of us, and it's like these programming that lives inside of us. And I'm like, I started to explore like where I decided to get this belief from. And you know, I always make the joke, like I just did on stage talking about my dad, who I love, who's, you know, one of my best friends, but you know, we drove past 10 gas stations to save 10 cents on gas growing up. It's like, why don't we go to this gas station, Dad? He's like, because the other one's less expensive. And it's like that stuff was ingrained in my programming, right? And so a lot of times, like when I was struggling, it was like, yes, it was my fault. And it wasn't until I took 100% responsibility for it. But I had to have help bringing this awareness to things that I was unconscious about. That's a true secret, because if a person's not aware of these things, how are they going to fix it? And so number 2 would be, if you are aware of it, will you decide to do something about it? Right. And that's where there's a choice. It's like, hey, I'm aware of this thing now, but am I going to make this decision, or am I going to act like it's not there? Right. Because ultimately that decision has to be made.
because some people, once they become aware, then they just destroy themselves, right? And they beat themselves up. They hide because of shame. And that's one path that you could go down, or you could do like your freshman self did and said, this was humiliating, this was embarrassing, and I'm going to do what it requires, what it takes to overcome this.
Yeah.
Love
And
this.
so, yeah, people need to pay attention, like probably a tangent, but the feeling, right? Like the emotions actually
Yes.
the messenger. And so
Yes.
I think people
Yes.
that aren't aware of these things are just not in tune to like what the emotion actually is. And that's where, like, if I have an emotion that I don't like, I explore it immediately, not suppress it. It's like, interesting. Like, why was that a trigger? Like, what was the actual emotion and what is it telling me so that I can let it go? Right. And so other
So good.
people fight it like with like force. It's like stuff it down. Right. And
Yes.
eventually it's like a volcano, and that's going to be a
Yeah.
volcano of negative emotion, which is never fun. But
Right.
we could definitely talk about that. After the decision, it's like then the point is like it's not just one decision, because that programming took a long time.
Yeah.
Probably it's like you can change a program quickly, but a lot of times it's like that's just an old paradigm that might come up again and again, and it might be like a relentless persistence for you to change that type of programming in order to step into the new way or new being of you. So I just don't think people are clear on the actual problem, and then they're not supremely clear of where they want to go at the same time. It's like a vague direction where
Yeah.
people that I know that are successful, there's a here I am, here's where I want to go. And like those 2 points are very important. Sounds simple, but a lot of people can't find the beginning or the end.
Yeah, they can't. So one of the things that I have kind of sensed from you is that you're really focused, and you could potentially offer people 1,000 different things and help them in 1,000 different ways. And you made a decision to start and focus on one thing. I'm really curious. I've never dove into your business, but like I have a very simple business model, and I have a feeling you have something really similar. And I think it would be really interesting to hear how you're building your business, kind of how many different ways that people can work with you, and ultimately how that gives you freedom. You talked about how freedom is always been your goal, right? And you could have gone many different directions in your career, and yet you made this decision to go in this direction. So how is this direction, this model currently providing freedom for you?
Freedom, yeah, freedom's my north star. And so you're right. Like now I'm like, I could do business consulting, I could do this, like I could teach, fitness pros how to build an online fitness brand. And like there's a lot of things like, and I have like people like, dude, I'll write you whatever check, like teach me this. And it's like, okay, cool, like I can do that, right? But ultimately I built a model because I wanted freedom so bad that gives me ultimate, like as close to ultimate freedom as possible. So the window into my world is my company is called Superhuman, and Superhuman specializes specifically on this outer transformation in the beginning. It's like if a person doesn't know who I am, I'm spraying ads all over the internet, and it's like, hey, if you're an entrepreneur, CEO, high performer, somebody who's driven and ambitious, you've been trying to do fitness already. So notice I'm presupposing that they're not lazy eating Pringles on the couch. It's like, look, if you need a savior, this program's not for you. High achievers, you're already putting effort in. Yet, despite all the effort, you look into the mirror and you see somebody who's slightly better than, your friends, or a little bit more than mediocre. So again, it's presupposing you're not completely out of shape. You're in decent shape, but wouldn't it be nice if your body matched the business you've been able to create, right? And so like this is so easy for me, but it like when I watch other people's fitness ads, people are like, I get people and they can't afford my services and they don't have any money. It's like, well, because your messaging is presupposing this brokenness. There's not a piece of my message that presupposes brokenness. In my video, I'm literally saying, look, you live in the suburbs, your kids probably go to private schools, you might have a Mercedes or a BMW or something of the like. You have a white picket fence. Your wife and your kids love you very much. Like, why would you actually want to be a savage in your fitness? But you actually do. You just have to admit it, right? And so my applications are flooded with these people because I'm speaking to this person. right?
Yeah.
And so like
So
they
good.
come in my pipeline, and then there's like a couple different options for them to join, and it's a fitness company. And so we
Mm.
have 22 people on staff now. So it's not like, hey, it's just a John Madsen show. There's 22 different people. It's all private, one-on-one, custom coaching. So a person knows
Wow.
precisely what to do: sets, reps, rest periods. They get to keep track of their workouts. They have a coach checking in with them if they want to work out 3 days a week or 4 days a week, or if they travel a lot, or whatever their lifestyle is and their goals, like we customize it. And so
So good.
I fully believe in that customization. However,
Yeah.
like, we have a customer experience team, we have a coaching team, we have an events team. And so I get to cast the vision. I get to speak life into the people. I get on a weekly call and I
Mm.
create the culture. The culture of excellence is actually our secret. So it's like all that customization and stuff. There's probably a million other trainers that know similar things to me. So it's not like I'm a rocket scientist when it comes to the body, yet I don't think a person could find the ridiculous transformations from anybody. Like we get ridiculous transformations if a
Wow.
person saw them. And so the reason is the culture of excellence. They get involved in the messaging of Supra, and I'm speaking that
Yeah.
life into them every single week. Right. And so that
Yeah.
culture is a culture of excellence. And that's my job. That's what I love to do. And I get to go drop my daughter off at school, and I get to pick her up and go to dance class, and I get to travel and work from anywhere, because our fulfillment is lights out, because I built the company for freedom. So if I go
So
to
good.
answer your question long term, there's different levels of our ascension. There's some mindset stuff that's cool, but ultimately I'm not running around trying to do everything and be everything
Yeah.
for everybody. And from a
Yeah.
marketing sense, I'm only talking about fitness on the front end, because otherwise people are like, what does this guy even do? Like, is he a Tony Robbins, or is he that? Like, how are
Mhm.
you going to help me? I'm like, I'm just going to help you get the body. They come into my world, and then they're like, oh, there's a lot more to this than just that. However, I built the business for that purpose.
John, this is so good. I think too often entrepreneurs see an individual like you and many successful others, and they go build their kind of business because they could, and only to realize that's not actually what they wanted, right? And so the fact that you had this North Star, that what I want more than anything is freedom, not this big complex business. I want freedom. And that means I want to be able to drop my daughter off at school. I want to be able to travel with my family. I want to have dinner with my wife and kids in the evenings. And having that clarity and that focus and that North Star, then every time that you're making decisions and making moves inside of your business, you're looking at that North Star and saying, what does this do to my freedom? Does this increase my freedom? Does it decrease my freedom? And you're
Right.
using that North Star to make those decisions, which is just absolutely critical. And you brought up, sometimes people don't have that North Star. They don't have that big dream. They don't have that big vision. What would you say to somebody who is looking to get more clarity on that vision and that dream and that North Star? What's one or two steps they can take today to start getting there?
I mean, if they don't know what they ultimately want, nobody else is going to know it for them. Right.
Yeah.
Like if I don't know what I want, nobody's going to know me more than I can know me. But like, I have to get real with myself. Like, spend some time. Like, what is your goal this year? But what's your goal next year? And like, I would encourage people to do 10 years of goals. Like, I've
Yeah.
actually done this for myself for 90 years as a simulation of
Mm.
it's kind of a quantum exercise, but B, after 10 years, our time of like what's possible and not possible is like really distorted. And so it's
Yeah.
like, well, I had all these goals that I hit, and then 10 years comes and it's like, what else do I want? Right.
Yeah.
And then try
Yeah.
to do that for 25 years. And you're like, well,
Yeah.
who knows? Like maybe I'll buy Disney and influence the world in the way that I want to influence it, instead of the way that it's
Mhm.
being influenced to the kids. Right. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying that I would or wouldn't do that, but it forces you to explore 30 years down the road with intense focus. Like, what could I actually do? And the
Yeah.
sky is actually the limit, but then it also does something else, which it brings up constraints in your programming. All of a sudden it's like, would I
Mm.
want to do that? And then ultimately it's like, well, I would, but that would mean that that would be way too much work. And it's like, well, would or wouldn't it? Or could I take the equal sign out of that programming and be like, well, I could decide. right? And so a lot of times
Mhm.
people, I know this is a long-winded answer, but a lot of times people don't have the long-term vision. And so they're
Yeah.
constantly thinking just short-term. And so there's like, it's like driving down the road and you're looking 10 feet ahead and so the car
Yes.
is going like this, right? And so
Yeah.
you need to see into the future. Albert Einstein said, your imagination, well, there's a quote, I'll mess it up, but he said, your imagination um, will ultimately be played out in reality in some way, shape, or form. He
Mm.
said that quote, right? One of my mentors says, whatever you play on the stage of your mind is a preview of coming attraction,
So
right?
good.
And so
Yeah.
it's like our imagination was a gift. If we direct
Yes.
that imagination into the things we want, we're bringing them from a spiritual and mental sense into the realm of reality. And just as equally powerful, if we're focused on what we don't want, we're bringing them from the spiritual and mental
Mhm.
realm into reality. So it works in
Yeah.
both directions. So
Yeah.
for me, it's like I got to direct that as far as I can see so that I can be as clear as I can be. And then
Yeah.
ultimately, I have to explore with awareness, like where those little programs are. That's like, well, if I did this, that would mean that. And it's like, I can choose to like blow all that stuff up if I want to.
So good. So good. I want you to kind of bring this all together for us because you talked about freedom and your family and achieving excellence and having the potential to be like your creator. So as you look at your long-term vision, goals, and targets that you're creating, why do those things matter to you specifically? Why does that matter to you?
It's an interesting question. Like I've been gifted with ambition and desire and drive for whatever reason. And so
Mhm.
I don't believe I need to go psychoanalyze myself of where that came from, as long as
Sure.
it's held
Yeah.
in a healthy way, right? Now,
Yeah. Yeah.
like if you think about like Michael Jordan or Tom Brady or Kobe
Mhm.
Bryant, or like sometimes, books like Relentless or Winning by Tim Grover, which I don't like, by the way, but that's neither here nor there. I'm like, because it's sacrifice at all costs everything if you're going to be a winner. And I'm
Mm.
like, I don't believe that's true, but I also don't believe that I am the best in the world like Michael Jordan was. Not
Mm.
it's because I do believe in the grandest sense that what Michael had to do to be Michael was pretty much sacrifice everything for this greatest in the world drive that he had in his heart. So
Yeah.
therefore balance may not be able to exist, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Like personal lives, this type of stuff, maybe as a father, all the different stuff for if we're talking about the greatest in the world.
Yeah.
And yet these books are written and they're trying to inspire people. And these people then are like, I gotta sacrifice everything. I gotta grind from
Yes.
5 a.m.
Yeah.
till 11 at night. Like this is the season of blah, blah, blah. I might have to miss the soccer games and the this and the dance recitals. I'm like, cool, you go do that then. I'm like, because I'm not really playing for this idea that I'm going to be the greatest person, whoever. I'm like, I'm going to be the greatest me that I could
Mm.
possibly be. And I'm going to do the things that fill me up and I'm going to be there for my family and do the things that like I love. And so for me, that allows me to have a supremely balanced life. If you look
Yeah.
at fitness, business, money, spirituality, relationships, fatherhood, I'm like, I can be an 8 or 9 across the board and be supremely balanced, supremely excellent, as I would call it. Now, if
Mhm.
I wanted one to be the 10 and other things would fall to a 2, I'm just not willing to do that. Right.
Yeah.
And so my message is like, and antithesis of that, be
Love
excellent in
this.
all that you do. Now, that doesn't mean you have to sacrifice other things down to 2s or 3s. So I would love to, just encourage people to consider that there is this excellence that can live across all domains, right? But that
Yeah.
clarity, like you have to come at it with that clarity. Otherwise, you can risk this, uh, you can risk certain things that might be important to
Yeah.
you in your head, but then ultimately you get to a place where like you come to the end of your life and you're like, why did I care to become a billionaire? Right? You're 90 years old,
Right.
you're in your rocking chair and you're like, I missed everything.
Yeah.
Like, would it be
Yeah.
worth it? And I don't know why, but I have this sense like I'm aware of that. I'm like
Mm.
supremely aware of that in my decision making. And so I have big revenue goals. I have a lot of things in business that I want to create. And I know that it's not at the expense of what matters most to me.
Oh
So
man, I
yeah,
love that. Couldn't agree more, John. I love that. And what I'm hearing you say, you didn't use these words, but why this matters to you, like why it's meaningful to you, is because that potential is there inside of you, and you
that was the
want
question.
to.
I lost your question, and the why
That's
was like,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so what I was getting at is like the why is because at the end of my life, I want to experience it all, right? Like I want to experience this life and not miss it. And like I want to get to the gates or whatever you call it and be like, I was as excellent as I could be. Of course there was mistakes. Of course there were shortcomings. Of course, you know, not everything all the time was like absolutely perfect. But when I get to the end, it's like I played this game of life to the best of my ability, and I like gave it as much effort as I possibly could, and I didn't sacrifice the best things in life for shiny objects that, you know, some people play for, right? Like I love money, I love things, I love lifestyle, but those things have a that they're not my idols. Like it's just the fruit of what I get to create.
Man, I love that word experience. It goes back to what you were talking about, is like really having that emotional understanding and that emotional connection with self, so that you then can kind of share that out to your potential customers and clients. And experiencing something does create all kinds of emotions, like physical sensations in our body. And that's part of what it means to be a human. And it's really sad when I meet individuals who have become so hardened by the difficulties of business and life and the complexity that can come with owning and managing your own business, that, like you said earlier, they have kind of shoved down a lot of feelings and emotions, and therefore are not experiencing the fullness of life. And so I really appreciate you shining a light on that. I think there are a lot of individuals who will benefit hearing from an incredibly strong, tall. By the way, how tall are you? I have to tell you, like when we were talking in person, I was like, holy cow, this man is a giant. Like it's really impressive to be next to you. How tall are you?
Yeah, I love that, because a lot of times, especially in fitness, for whatever reason, I'll see people and then I get to them in person. I'm like, oh, you're not as like this persona, right? And so
yeah.
everybody that like, and we just did this event, so I heard the same thing like over and over. They're like, oh, you really are that like that big as you look on social. And so I'm 6'5", 240 pounds, and yeah, so it's real height. It's not like one of those 6'5s where you're like, oh, you know, he's probably 6'3". It's like legit 6'5".
Yeah, no, it is. And like you have, because of everything that we've talked about, your ability to know yourself internally and navigate that internal world, you have this presence around you. So like, yes, you're 6'5", and like your you-ness extends beyond that, because there's just this radiation that comes from you. And we didn't even talk about this today, but like I heard you talk about this in one of your presentations, and I feel strongly about this too. It's that you are in alignment, that your thoughts, your feelings, your actions are all lining up with what you want, what you dream of, what you desire, and it's all in alignment. And
I accept it. Yeah, I accept it, because it's truly like that. I think I had to work on that. Like I wouldn't have been able to say that for 35 years of my life, right? Like even with the jerseys hanging on the wall, like I didn't know who I really was. Like I was the football. I was like, my identity was tied to like the football guy, right? Like the NFL player. And it's like I had to have the shatter. Like literally, you know, it's a whole other podcast, but I had to have the shattering and destruction of my identity, because it was placed on things outside of myself. And so like I saw how destructive that was in my own life. I have so many NFL friends and college like friends that their dream dies, and with them their identity, and it's just this spiral of like destruction. And I went through it, but I was able to come out of it. And so like when I recreated this version of me that's speaking now, it's like my identity is rooted in the center of me and my creator. And it's like that is solid. So it's not about, you know, the business. It's not about any of that stuff. It's not about my success or lack of success. It's that alignment within, and I see that in you. And so I'll acknowledge you too. And I think that that's where that resonance comes from. And so that's always going to work in marketing, but it's even more powerful in real life when you're connecting with people and sharing the trueness of you, because there's a lot of vulnerability in that, but ultimately there's a lot of courage and a lot of strength and a lot of power in that too.
Yes. John Madsen, you have shared so much wisdom with us today. I loved the stories to help people understand in greater detail what you're talking about. I even really liked how you kind of went into the details and the nuance of speaking to your ideal customer and client, and they're not so black and white, and there's a lot of nuance to that client, and really understanding that nuance and speaking to those unique both places that they're at in their life and dreams and desires that they have. So I know that you are very active on social media. Share with everybody how they can follow you.
Yeah, Instagram would be the best. So John Madsen official would be the best place. I have a podcast that has probably 250 episodes or so. So you'll see the links and stuff. If you just go to Instagram, you'll see all that stuff. If you wanted to search podcast, you could go to any of the platforms and just type in my name, John Madsen, the show, and you'll have all of that content too.
Awesome. Awesome. And we will make sure to have links to that as well inside of the show notes. John, this was incredible. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate your authenticity, your wisdom, and the power as you speak.
Thank you so much. Enjoyed every minute of it.
Awesome. And for everybody who's listening, this is What's Working Now.